The shuttle doors opened with a soft hiss, and Ambassador Daniel Hayes stepped onto the crystal floor of the Galactic Council station. The air smelled strange, like metal mixed with flowers he could not name. Lights of every color floated above him, and the ceiling stretched so high that it disappeared into darkness. He had seen many strange things in his life, but this place made him feel very small. Behind him walked his aide, Lieutenant Katie Morse. She was a tall woman with sharp eyes and short brown hair. Her face showed nothing, no fear, no wonder, no anger. She had learned long ago to hide what she felt, just like Daniel had. Aliens of every shape and size filled the massive hall. Some walked on two legs like humans. Others crawled on many limbs or floated through the air without touching the ground. Their eyes, some with pupils and some without, all turned toward the two humans. Daniel could feel their stares like cold fingers on his skin. The Volari were the first species he recognized. They stood nearly 8 feet tall with silver skin that shimmered under the lights. Each of them had 4 arms, and their faces were flat with large yellow eyes. They looked at the humans the way a person might look at insects crawling across their dinner table. Near the Volari stood a group of Kreth, insectoid creatures with hard black shells and clicking mandibles. Their compound eyes reflected the light in 1,000 tiny mirrors. They made sounds with their mouths that the translator in Daniel's ear could not fully capture, but he understood the meaning well enough. They were laughing at him. Humanity had discovered faster than light travel only 40 years ago. To these ancient races, who had sailed between stars for thousands of years, humans were nothing. They were children playing at being adults, newcomers who did not deserve a seat at the great table of galactic civilization. Daniel smiled warmly at every alien he passed. He nodded his head in greeting. He kept his hands visible and his movements slow. Everything about him said that he was harmless, friendly, and perhaps a little foolish. This was exactly what he wanted them to believe, what none of these aliens knew. What no intelligence service in the galaxy had discovered was that Daniel Hayes was not simply a diplomat. Before he had learned to shake hands and make speeches, he had spent 23 years as a soldier. But not just any soldier. He had been the most dangerous operative in the history of the United States. Special Operations Command. In the dark corners of Earth, in places where official records did not exist, he had earned a different name. They called him the Reaper. His file, locked away in vaults that only 5 people could access, listed over 200 confirmed kills. He had ended wars before they started. He had removed threats that the public never knew existed. He had done terrible things so that ordinary people could sleep safely in their beds. The Earth government had chosen him for this mission with great care. They knew the Galactic Council was hostile. They knew the aliens saw humanity as a threat to be contained or destroyed. They needed someone who could survive anything. Someone who could protect human interests, even when surrounded by enemies. Daniel was that someone. Hi. Council of Vexaran descended from a floating platform to greet them. He was a reptilian creature, 9 feet tall, with emerald green scales and eyes like burning amber. His mouth was full of teeth, and his voice rumbled like distant thunder when he spoke. "The primitives may speak," he announced, gesturing toward a podium at the center of the hall. His translator rendered the words clearly, and the contempt in his voice was impossible to miss. Daniel walked to the podium with the same pleasant smile on his face. He looked out at the hundreds of alien delegates, at their hostile eyes and dismissive postures, and he began to speak. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," he said, his voice calm and clear. "I come to you on behalf of Earth and all of humanity. We are a young species, yes. We have much to learn from your ancient civilizations. But we also have much to offer." He spoke of trade agreements that would benefit both sides. He spoke of cultural exchange and shared knowledge. He spoke of peace and cooperation. of building a future together among the stars. The aliens listened with varying degrees of attention. Some seemed bored. Others whispered to each other in languages Daniel could not understand. A few studied him with suspicious eyes, trying to see beneath his friendly surface. Katie stood near the wall, her position carefully chosen. She could see all the exits from where she stood. She could spot trouble before it reached them. Like Daniel, she was more than she appeared. She had served in military intelligence for 15 years before joining the diplomatic corps. Her job was to watch, to listen, and to keep Daniel alive. When Daniel finished his speech, there was polite applause from a few delegations. The Makari, small creatures with gray skin and large heads, seemed genuinely interested in his proposals. The Zendari, tall and thin with blue skin and gentle eyes, nodded in approval, but the Valari did not clap. The Kreth did not move. And High Counselor Vexeron looked at Daniel with something cold and calculating in his reptilian eyes. "We will consider your words," Vexeron said. "The Council will discuss humanity's petition and inform you of our decision." Daniel bowed his head respectfully. "Thank you, High Counselor. We await your wisdom." As he walked back to Katie's side, he allowed his smile to fade just slightly. She leaned close to him, pretending to adjust his collar. "They're planning something," she whispered, her lips barely moving. "I know," Daniel replied. "I've been watching the Kreth guards. Their patterns changed twice during my speech. Someone gave them new orders." Katie's eyes flickered toward the eastern side of the hall. "I count at least 8 potential hostiles. Maybe more." Daniel nodded slowly. "Get our extraction plan ready. Something tells me this diplomatic mission is about to get interesting." They were given quarters in a distant wing of the station, far from the other delegations. The message was clear. Humans were outsiders, barely tolerated, certainly not welcome. Daniel stood at the window of his room, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, millions of light years away, Earth hung in the darkness. His home. The world he had killed to protect. The world he would kill again to protect if necessary. He had come here hoping for peace. He had extended his hand in friendship. But he could feel the danger building around him like a storm about to break. The Reaper had been sleeping for many years. Daniel hoped he would not need to wake up again. But hope, as he had learned long ago, was not a strategy. Deep beneath the council hall, in chambers that did not appear on any official map, 7 of the most powerful beings in the galaxy gathered in secret. The room was dark, lit only by a single blue light that hung in the center like a frozen flame. Shadows covered their faces, but their voices carried clearly through the cold air. High Counselor Vexeran sat at the head of the long table, his clawed hands pressed together in front of his face. His amber eyes glowed softly in the darkness, studying each of his co-conspirators in turn. "The humans expand too quickly," hissed Ambassador Silex of the Kreth Dominion. His insectoid body clicked and rattled as he spoke, his mandibles snapping together between words. 14 worlds in 30 years. 14. It took my people 1,000 years to claim half that many. They breed like vermin, rumbled General Krath, the supreme commander of the Valari military forces. He was massive, even for his species, his forearms thick with muscle and covered in battle scars. Every generation, their numbers double. If we do nothing, they will outnumber us within 2 centuries. A soft voice came from the shadows at the far end of the table. Their technology advances at an alarming rate as well. This was Minister Zoral of the Sindari, though he represented only a small faction of his peaceful species. They have already reverse-engineered our shield technology and improved upon it. Given time, they may surpass us all. Vexeran listened to each of them speak, his face revealing nothing. He had ruled the council for 300 years, guiding it through wars and crises that would have destroyed lesser civilizations. He had seen many species rise and fall. And now, for the first time in his long life, he felt something close to fear. The humans were different. They were not content to accept their place in the galactic order. They pushed forward constantly, always reaching, always growing, always changing. They were unpredictable in a way that made them dangerous. "We must act now," Krath said, slamming one of his fists against the table. "While they are still weak, while they still have only a handful of warships and a few dozen colonies. In 50 years, it will be too late." "But how?" asked Lord Merrix of the Kalari Federation. He was a small creature, covered in soft fur, with eyes that seemed too large for his face. "If we attack them openly, we risk war. Our own populations are tired of conflict. They will not support another campaign." This was the question they had gathered to answer. Open war was not possible. The Council had maintained peace for 1,000 years, and that peace had made their citizens soft and comfortable. They would not accept military action against a species that had done nothing to threaten them directly. "Then we do not act openly," Vexaran said, speaking for the first time since the meeting began. His voice was low and cold, like stones grinding together in deep water. "We act in shadow. We remove the human presence from this station, from this council, and we do it in a way that cannot be traced back to us." The others leaned forward, listening intently. "The human ambassador is attending the formal banquet tomorrow evening," Vexaran continued. "It will be crowded, chaotic, full of movement and noise. The perfect opportunity for an incident." "An assassination," Krath said, his yellow eyes brightening with interest. "A regrettable accident," Vexaran corrected. "We have many factions and splinter groups in the galaxy. Any one of them could be blamed. The humans will suspect us, of course, but they will have no proof. Without their diplomat, they will be forced to retreat from galactic affairs. It will buy us time to prepare proper countermeasures." Ambassador Silix's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of excitement among his people. "My hive has the finest assassins in the Dominion. I will provide 4 of them for this task. And I will provide 4 warriors from my personal guard," Krath added. "Each has killed over 100 enemies in combat." Others around the table offered their own contributions. Within minutes, they had assembled a team of 12 killers, drawn from the deadliest species in the known galaxy. Each was a master of death, trained from birth in the arts of violence. "What do we know about the human?" Lord Merrix asked. "Is he protected? Does he have guards?" Vexaran waved one of his clawed hands, and a holographic image appeared above the table. It showed Daniel Hayes walking through the council halls, smiling and nodding at everyone he passed. His female aide walked beside him, carrying data tablets and looking tired. "He has no visible guards," Vexaran observed. "The humans sent him with only a single assistant. They are either very confident or very foolish. Based on my observations, I believe it is the latter." "He looks soft," Silix hissed. "He smiles too much. He laughs at small things. There is no strength in his eyes." "Their species is pathetically emotional," Krath agreed. "They cry at music. They form attachments to small animals. They write poetry about their feelings. This will be simple." The conspirators reviewed surveillance footage from the past 3 days. They watched Daniel eat breakfast, attend meetings, and walk through the station's gardens. He moved slowly, without urgency. He stopped to examine flowers and artwork. He asked silly questions about alien customs and seemed genuinely interested in the answers. "He's a diplomat, nothing more," Vexaran concluded. "The humans value talking over fighting. They have sent us their best speaker, not their best warrior. This is their great weakness." The plan was finalized in the hours that followed. The 12 assassins would position themselves throughout the banquet hall. When the signal was given, they would attack simultaneously, overwhelming the human before he could call for help. The whole thing would be over in seconds. "One more thing," Bexaran said as the meeting drew to a close. "The human female must also be eliminated. We cannot leave witnesses who might identify our agents." "It will be done," Krath promised. The conspirators departed one by one, slipping back to their quarters through hidden passages. By morning, there would be no evidence that this meeting had ever taken place. In his quarters, Daniel Hayes stood perfectly still by his window, his eyes closed but his senses fully alert. He had felt eyes watching him all day, invisible cameras tracking his movements, calculating his weaknesses. He knew what they were planning, even if he did not know the details. Katie entered the room through a side door, her face troubled. "I've completed my sweep," she said quietly. "Our quarters are monitored from at least 6 different angles. There are listening devices in the walls, the furniture, and probably our clothing." Daniel did not turn around. Good. "Let them watch," he said. "Let them think they know me. It will make them overconfident." He finally turned to face her, and for just a moment, she saw something different in his eyes. Something cold and ancient and very, very dangerous. "When they come for us, and they will come, they will learn that they have made a terrible mistake." Katie nodded slowly. She had seen that look before, years ago, in places that did not officially exist. She knew what it meant. The Reaper was waking up. The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council burned with light. 1,000 crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, each one casting rainbows across the polished floors. Music from a dozen alien instruments filled the air, strange melodies that twisted and turned in ways human ears were not designed to understand. The smell of exotic foods drifted from tables that stretched the length of the enormous room. Delegates from 47 species filled the hall. The Valari stood in proud groups, their silver skin reflecting the light like living mirrors. The Kreth moved through the crowd in precise patterns, their compound eyes watching everything at once. Smaller species darted between the legs of larger ones, and floating creatures drifted near the ceiling like living clouds. Daniel Hayes stood near a pillar at the edge of the hall, holding a glass of something the Valari called wine. It tasted like liquid copper mixed with something sour, but he pretended to enjoy it. He smiled at every alien who passed, nodded politely at those who met his eyes, and made small talk with anyone willing to speak to him. He looked perfectly relaxed. A harmless diplomat enjoying a party, but beneath his calm surface, every nerve in his body was screaming. He had felt the change the moment he entered the hall. The air felt different, charged with electricity that had nothing to do with the floating lights. The Kreth guards near the eastern entrance were standing too straight, their bodies angled toward him instead of toward the crowd. The Valari servers were moving in patterns that made no sense for service, but made perfect sense for encirclement. After 23 years in the shadows, Daniel could smell an ambush like other people could smell rain before a storm. Katie was across the room, pretending to examine a sculpture while talking with a group of Mercari traders. Her position was not random. From where she stood, she could see 3 exits and had a clear path to the emergency corridors. She caught Daniel's eye for just a moment, and he saw that she knew too. Daniel raised his hand to his collar, adjusting it slightly. The movement activated the subdermal communicator hidden beneath the skin of his jaw. "Katie," he said, his lips barely moving. To anyone watching, it would look like he was simply scratching his neck. 12 hostiles confirmed. Eastern approach is primary. Secondary team near the kitchen entrance. Execute Protocol 7 on my signal. Her voice came back as a faint vibration in his skull, too quiet for any external device to detect. Understood. Extraction shuttle is on standby. I can have it here in 4 minutes. Good. When I give the word, get to the shuttle and alert the fleet. Do not wait for me. Daniel, I am not leaving you here alone. That is an order, Lieutenant. There was a pause. Understood, sir. Daniel set down his glass of alien wine and began to move slowly through the crowd. He was not running or hiding. He was positioning himself, putting his back against a solid wall, ensuring he had room to move when the attack came. Every step was calculated, every gesture designed to appear casual while preparing for violence. High Counselor Vexaran watched from across the hall, his amber eyes tracking the human ambassador. The reptilian leader sipped his own drink and allowed himself a small smile. Everything was proceeding perfectly. The assassins were in position. The exits were covered. In a few minutes, the human problem would be solved forever. He gave a subtle signal, a simple gesture with one clawed finger that meant nothing to anyone who was not looking for it. The lights in the grand hall flickered. Just for a moment, and then the world exploded into motion. The first assassin came from behind Daniel, a Kreth warrior moving with incredible speed. His blade was a molecular weapon designed to cut through any known armor in the galaxy. It hummed with deadly energy as it sliced toward the human's unprotected back. Daniel had been tracking the Kreth for the past 30 seconds by the sound of his breathing. He moved like water, spinning away from the blade while his hand shot out to catch the assassin's wrist. The motion was so fast, so precise, that it seemed impossible. In one smooth movement, Daniel redirected the blade's momentum, turning it back toward its wielder. The molecular edge sliced through the Kreth's own exoskeleton, severing the nerve cluster at the base of its skull. The creature collapsed without a sound, dead before it hit the ground. The hall fell silent. The music stopped. Every eye turned toward the human ambassador, who stood calmly over the body of one of the deadliest warriors in the galaxy. Daniel straightened his jacket and looked directly at High Counselor Vexaran. The reptilian leader's amber eyes were wide with shock, his mouth hanging open to reveal rows of sharp teeth. I believe, Daniel said quietly, his voice carrying through the stunned silence. We need to have a different conversation. For a long moment, no one moved. The delegates stood frozen, unable to process what they had just witnessed. A human, a primitive from a backwater planet, had just killed a Kreth warrior with his bare hands. Then the other 11 assassins attacked. They came from every direction. A coordinated assault designed to overwhelm any defense. Velari warriors swung plasma staffs that could burn through steel. Kreth assassins lunged with poisoned blades. A massive creature from a species Daniel did not recognize charged toward him like a living tank. Daniel smiled, that it was not the pleasant smile he had worn for the past 3 days. This was something different, something cold and sharp and utterly without mercy. It was the smile of a predator finally allowed to hunt. Katie, he said into his communicator, execute now. Across the hall, Katie was already moving. She knocked a Velari guard unconscious with a strike to his pressure point, grabbed his weapon, and sprinted toward the emergency exit. She did not look back. She had her orders. Daniel turned to face his attackers, and the Reaper woke up completely. The first Velari to reach him died with his own plasma staff embedded in his chest. Daniel had taken the weapon from his hands in the span of a heartbeat, reversed it, and driven it through his silver armor before the alien could blink. A Kreth blade whistled toward his head. Daniel ducked beneath it, grabbed the attacker's arm, and used the creature's own momentum to throw it into 2 of its companions. They went down in a tangle of limbs and blades. The massive creature reached him next, arms spread wide to crush him in a deadly embrace. Daniel did not try to block or dodge. Instead, he stepped into the attack, driving his elbow into the creature's throat with enough force to collapse its windpipe. Blood of several colors now stained the crystal floor. The air smelled of copper and smoke. Screams echoed through the grand hall as delegates fled in panic, trampling each other in their desperation to escape. Daniel paid them no attention. His world had narrowed to the simple mathematics of combat. Target, distance, angle, force. Everything else had disappeared, leaving only the pure clarity of violence. The Reaper had work to do. 8 assassins remained standing, and they had stopped underestimating their target. They spread out in a wide circle around Daniel, their weapons raised and their eyes fixed on the human who had just killed 4 of their companions in less than 20 seconds. The panic around them continued, delegates screaming and running for the exits. But the assassins no longer cared about stealth or secrecy. They wanted this human dead. Daniel stood at the center of their circle, his breathing slow and steady. His diplomatic suit was torn at the shoulder, and there was purple Valari blood on his hands, but his eyes were calm. He watched them all simultaneously, tracking their movements, calculating their distances, predicting their attacks. 2 Kreth warriors attacked from opposite sides, their movements perfectly synchronized through their hive mind connection. They had trained together for decades, learning to fight as one being with 2 bodies. No enemy had ever survived their coordinated assault. Daniel did not try to block both attacks. That would have been impossible even for him. Instead, he moved toward the Kreth on his left, stepping inside the arc of its blade at the last possible moment. The warrior's strike passed harmlessly behind him, but now he was too close for the Kreth to use its weapon effectively. He drove his palm into the creature's face, shattering its compound eyes. The Kreth screamed, a high-pitched sound like breaking glass, and staggered backward. The second Kreth, already committed to its synchronized attack, could not stop. Its blade, aimed at where Daniel had been standing, plunged instead into the chest of its blinded partner. The dying Kreth collapsed, taking its companion's weapon with it. Before the surviving Kreth could recover, Daniel had grabbed its head with both hands. One sharp twist, and its neck snapped like dry wood. 5 attackers remained. They came at him together this time, abandoning any pretense of strategy. A Valari warrior swung a massive hammer toward Daniel's skull. A serpentine creature from the outer systems lunged with fangs dripping venom. 2 more Kreth charged from behind, and something that looked like living shadow flowed across the floor toward his feet. Daniel moved. He dropped to the ground beneath the hammer's swing, rolled across the crystal floor, and came up behind the serpentine creature. His hand found a pressure point at the base of its skull, and the creature went limp instantly, its nervous system temporarily paralyzed. The shadow creature wrapped around his ankle, trying to pull him down. Daniel stamped his foot hard against the floor, and the thing released him with a shriek of pain. It retreated into the darkness beneath the tables, leaving a trail of something that smoked and hissed where it touched the floor. The 2 Kreth reached him at the same moment, their blades crossing in a scissor pattern designed to cut him in half. Daniel jumped straight up, impossibly high for a human, and the blades passed beneath his feet. He came down on top of one Kreth, driving it to the floor, and in the same motion grabbed the other's blade arm and twisted. The joint snapped with a wet crack. The Kreth dropped its weapon, and Daniel caught it before it hit the ground. He spun, the alien blade singing through the air, and both Kreth fell in a spray of dark blood. The Valari with the hammer was the only assassin still standing. He was a veteran soldier, decorated in 30 campaigns across the galaxy. He had fought in wars that lasted centuries, had watched species rise and fall, and killed more enemies than he could remember. He was considered one of the greatest warriors the Valari had ever produced. He looked at the humans standing before him, surrounded by the bodies of warriors who should have been unbeatable. And for the first time in his long life, he felt real fear. "What are you?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Daniel considered the question for a moment. "I am a diplomat," he said. "I came here to make peace." "You are no diplomat." Diplomats do not fight like this. Diplomats do not kill like this. No, Daniel agreed. They do not. He moved forward, and the Valari swung his hammer with all his strength. It was a desperate attack, powerful but predictable. Daniel sidestepped it easily, letting the weapon's momentum carry the warrior off balance. His hand shot out and grabbed the Valari's wrist. With his other hand, he struck the inside of the warrior's elbow, bending the arm against its natural direction. The hammer fell from nerveless fingers. My people have a saying, Daniel said quietly, still holding the Valari in place. Civis pacem, parabellum. If you want peace, prepare for war. He struck once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. Each blow landed on a vital point, a junction of nerves and blood vessels that every human soldier learned to target. The Valari collapsed, his body broken in ways that no alien medicine could repair. Daniel stood alone in the center of the grand hall, surrounded by 11 bodies. The 12th, the shadow creature, had fled into the darkness and had not returned. The crystal floor was stained with blood of every color, and the air was thick with the smell of death. He turned slowly to face the remaining council members. They cowered behind overturned tables and fallen banners, their eyes wide with terror. High Counselor Vexaran had not moved from his position near the head table. His amber eyes were fixed on Daniel, and his scaled face had gone pale with shock. You sent 12 of your finest assassins to kill me, Daniel said, his voice carrying through the silent hall. 12 warriors drawn from the deadliest species in the galaxy, each one a master of their craft, each one worth 100 ordinary soldiers. He walked toward Vexaran, his footsteps echoing in the emptiness. And I killed them all without a weapon. Vexaran tried to speak, but no words came out. His throat had gone dry, and his hearts were beating so fast he thought they might burst. I came here to offer peace, Daniel continued. I extended my hand in friendship. I smiled and made jokes and pretended to be harmless because I wanted peace to be possible. I wanted to believe that we could be allies. He stopped directly in front of the High Counselor, close enough to touch. But you chose violence instead. You looked at humanity and saw weakness. You saw a species to be controlled, to be contained, to be eliminated before we could threaten your power. Daniel leaned forward until his face was inches from Vexaran's. You were wrong. Alarms began to sound throughout the station. Security forces would arrive soon, though Daniel doubted they would be eager to confront him after what they had just witnessed. Earth will know what happened here tonight, Daniel said. And when they do, they will respond. The question you need to ask yourself, High Counselor, is whether you want that response to be war or negotiation. He stepped back and straightened his torn jacket. I suggest you choose wisely. The morning after the banquet, Daniel sat in a small conference room on the far side of the station. Sunlight from a distant star streamed through the windows, casting long shadows across the polished table. He had showered, changed into a fresh suit, and looked once again like a harmless diplomat. But everyone in the room knew better now. Across from him sat the surviving members of the council leadership. High Counselor Vexaran was notably absent. He had been detained by his own people during the night, arrested for orchestrating an unauthorized assassination, attempt that had resulted in the deaths of 12 elite warriors and the near destruction of 1,000 years of galactic peace. Ambassador Silex of the Kreth Dominion represented his species now. His compound eyes studied Daniel with something new in them, something that might have been respect or fear or both. Beside him sat General Krath's replacement, a younger Velari named Commander Theres, who had not been part of the conspiracy. Lord Merrix of the Kaleri Federation sat at the far end of the table, his large eyes blinking nervously. Before we begin, Silex said, his mandibles clicking slowly, I must ask a question that has troubled me since last night. How did you survive? Our warriors were the finest in the galaxy. They had never failed before. Daniel considered the question for a long moment before answering. He could have refused to explain. He could have let the mystery remain, let fear do the work of 1,000 soldiers. But he had not come here to terrify the galaxy. He had come to build a future. Your species achieved civilization through cooperation, he said finally. The Kreth evolved hive minds that allowed them to work together perfectly. The Valari developed 4 arms so they could build and create more efficiently. The Kalari grew large brains for solving problems. Each of your peoples found peaceful ways to overcome the challenges of survival. He paused, making sure they were listening. Humanity did not have that luxury. We evolved on a world of limited resources, surrounded by predators, threatened by disease and famine and natural disasters. We survived not through cooperation, but through competition. For 200,000 years, humans have fought each other for food, for land, for power, for ideas. Every generation, we became better at violence. Every war, we learned new ways to kill. The aliens listened in uncomfortable silence. You look at our short history of space travel and see primitives, Daniel continued. You see a species that has only been among the stars for 40 years. But we have been perfecting the art of war since before your peoples discovered fire. Every human carries the inheritance of 1,000,000 battles in their blood. Some of us, those you might call soldiers or warriors or assassins, carry it more than others. Commander Theres leaned forward, her yellow eyes narrow with concern. Are you saying that all humans can fight like you did last night? No, Daniel admitted. I am unusual, even among my people. But I am not unique. Earth has thousands of soldiers who have trained as I have trained, who have killed as I have killed. And if you force us into war, you will face all of them. The room fell silent. The weight of his words hung in the air like smoke after a fire. Earth does not want war with the Council, Daniel said, his voice softening slightly. We have seen enough war among ourselves to last 1,000 lifetimes. We have burned cities and poisoned lands and slaughtered millions of our own kind in conflicts that achieved nothing. We came here seeking trade, seeking alliance, seeking peaceful coexistence. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small data chip, which he slid across the table toward Ambassador Silex. This contains a proposal for a new treaty between Earth and the Galactic Council, a genuine agreement of mutual respect and non-aggression, with provisions for trade, cultural exchange, and shared scientific research. The terms are generous. I suggest you read them carefully. Silex took the chip with trembling hands. And if we refuse, then we will leave this station and return to our own space. We will build our fleet and strengthen our defenses. And we will wait for you to make the first move. Daniel's eyes hardened for just a moment, showing a glimpse of the Reaper beneath the diplomat's mask. But I promise you this. If you come for humanity, we will not be content to simply defend ourselves. We will bring the war to your worlds. We will do what we have always done when threatened with extinction. We will survive, whatever the cost. The meeting continued for several more hours. Details were discussed, provisions were debated, and compromises were reached. By the time the sun began to set over the station, the outline of a new agreement had taken shape. 3 days later, Admiral Nathan Cruz arrived with a small fleet of Earth warships. They had been waiting just outside sensor range the entire time, a precaution that Earth's leaders had insisted upon. The sight of human vessels hanging in space near the Council station sent a message that words alone could not convey. The treaty was signed 1 week after the banquet. It was not everything Earth had hoped for, but it was more than anyone had expected. Trade routes were established. Cultural exchange programs were created. Human ships were granted access to Council space, and Council vessels were welcomed in human territories. Daniel Hayes became the most famous human in the galaxy. He gave interviews to alien journalists, attended ceremonies on a dozen different worlds, and smiled for cameras that broadcast his image across the stars. He was celebrated as the diplomat who had single-handedly transformed humanity's place in galactic society. Katie Morris returned to Earth to receive a promotion and a medal that she was not allowed to discuss publicly. She visited Daniel once before taking her new assignment, and they shared a drink in his quarters overlooking the station gardens. "You know this is not over," she said quietly. "They fear us now, but fear turns to hatred easily. Sooner or later, someone will try again." Daniel nodded slowly. "I know, but we have bought time. A generation, maybe two, before the next crisis. Time for humanity to grow stronger, to build alliances, to prove that we are more than warriors." He looked out at the stars, at the infinite darkness scattered with points of light. "The galaxy thinks they understand us now. They think they have seen the worst humanity has to offer. But they have only seen one small piece of what we are. We are capable of terrible violence, yes, but we are also capable of great kindness, great creativity, great love." He turned to face Katie with a small, tired smile. "That is what I am fighting for. Not to make the galaxy fear humanity, but to give us the chance to show them everything else we can be." Katie raised her glass. "To peace, then." "To peace," Daniel agreed. "And to whatever comes after." They drank together as the stars turned slowly outside the window. And somewhere in the depths of the station, the council began the long process of learning to see humans as something other than enemies. It would not be easy. It would not be quick. But for the first time since humanity had reached the stars, it was possible. And sometimes, possibility was enough.